We are ready for our next speaker, Dr. Carol Rosin. She's an award-winning educator, author, space and missile defense consultant, and she was a spokesperson for Dr. Wernher von Braun, which is probably where you all know her from the Disclosure Project, where she talked about von Braun and what he had told her about UFOs. But she's also started the movement for peace in space, and she'll be talking about that as well. So I'm very excited to have this wonderful speaker. So please help me welcome Dr. Carol Rosin.
Thank you.
Oh, you don't need this.
I don't.
So there you go, and this is ready to go for you.
Thank you. Well, it's been a long journey, I know, for all of us to get here. And one of my job descriptions at Open Minds is to share part of my story. But I want to say first, it's just an honor to be here with all of you because you have such courage. And I know that you have more background than I do in a lot of these UFO ET-related areas. But I've come here today to not just talk about myself, and please know this is not about me at all, even though I'm going to share a lot of it. I'm going to present to you something that I think is the most important document I have ever seen, and you will be seeing it for the first time. And of all people, you deserve to see this, and I hope that somehow your hearts will be touched by this as mine has been, because the people in this room, to me, are the most important people I've ever met, and I hope I can meet many of you, all of you, if it's possible. On Facebook, under my name, I'll have a link to this document that I'm going to tell you about in a few minutes. And an Indiana University student, Aubrey, just called and said that she set it up on a new Facebook site. Open Minds is going to have it on openminds.tv on their website. And I just can hardly wait. I'm bursting at the seams to tell you. But I'm going to start by thanking first Open Minds for opening my mind and so many others and inviting me here. And Paula Harris, who encouraged me to come, otherwise I probably never would have gotten on the plane. And so many other people, Dr. Stephen Greer, who with his wife took me to lunch one day in Washington and said, you have to tell the von Braun story, at least part of it, because it's an important part of this. And I was ready to just die with it all. And since I've been threatened, my husband and I have lost everything. We've had a lot happen to us over the years to try to shut me up and people like us up. And unfortunately for the people who have tried to do that, if you're in the audience, bring it on. Because like you, many of you, I've had it. And it's time for the truth. And as my husband, John Cipher, the retired actor, said at the beginning and at the end, he actually concluded the Disclosure Project by when a journalist asked him, actually he asked Stephen and said to Stephen Greer, if even one of your witnesses is telling a lie, if they're not telling the truth, and this discredits the whole thing. And my husband said, Stephen, do you mind if I answer that? My husband's usually pretty shy. He takes direction, he does an acting thing, but in person, But he got up on the front, on the podium, and said, no, if only one person here is telling the truth, if only one person in this room is telling the truth. My God, what's going on? Disclosure has taken place. What are we doing here? We're just here to hear more truth, but I'm going to present something to you that's going to activate all of us, I hope. Because we have one chance, and I think it's now. And I'll tell you why I even think that. Just before I came, there's an article that you may have read that's going around in the paper. Perhaps they heard about this conference coming. But now the article is about how the Pentagon wants to rule defense allies in space. What they're saying is they want to strengthen the ability to use the weapons in space as an uncharted battlefield in space. Get it? Imagine what that's going to do to our issue here of the extraterrestrial beings, the off-planet cultures, the cosmic cultures, my God. And they're talking about the importance of satellites for waging and deterring war. This is their language. It's so bold. And a lot of people are buying into this, and I bought into it. I was a 6th grade school teacher with the classroom that wanted to get off the planet. We were in a flood area in Orlando, Virginia, saying, How can we study if our area keeps getting flooded? I was swimming around in the streets one day telling the firemen where the people were in the houses, where the children lived to get them out of the flood zone. And look what's happening all over the planet. The climate changes, the people suffering. 500 million orphans and people still having children? How are we going to handle this? I mean, a lot of us have enough psychological problems from our own life stories growing up and what happened to us as children and so on. All these orphans. And the changes in the planet's Earth structure itself. We're in deep, you know what, and we have got to deal with these issues. And guess what? That we have the highest technology and the highest consciousness. We are able to solve these problems on the planet. But there are powers that be that are determined to stop us. I'm just going to back up for a minute and I'm going to skip around because I've lost my notes. I wrote them for months and months to come here and they're gone. So, my husband and I just got back from Ecuador. We lived there for a few years. I was working with the president of Ecuador. We were a couple of weeks away from the Minister of Defense himself, who was assigned to me from calling world leaders to come in to sign a treaty. We had bought, my husband and I, a hotel, built a conference center to have this meeting. We bought a farm across the road with a crop circle. We bought a home, guest houses. I had a horse sanctuary for abused horses. And we were infiltrated. The president's office was infiltrated. You read about it. There was a border war in Colombia. And he fired the Minister of Defense that I was working with and the 4 top military guys. And so we had no security. And then it happened in the little town that we were in. A big farce happened. Well, you and I have, I know, experienced betrayal at some time in our lives, but even some of my friends were spreading a discrediting campaign. Why? Who knows? Are they jealous, greedy egomaniacs? Are they paid off? Who knows? But what we do know is you and I have been blocked from the truth. We live under a canopy of lies behind a veil of secrecy. And thank goodness for meetings like this where the truth is coming out. And there are people here, I understand, that are still skeptics whether this is a real phenomenon or not. Forget it. If you don't believe it by now, you ought to go home. So now we have the truth. It's been disclosed, and we have some incredible speakers here. I can't wait to hear them myself because I was one of those people who I still have never read a UFO book, an ET book. I apologize because I know, like Paula Harris, I have her book. I have Stanton Friedman. Paula has these beautiful interviews in her new book, and I haven't read any of them because I didn't want to be tainted. I wanted to be able to come with my own true story if and when I ever came out with it, so here goes. From teaching school, where my classroom was launched into outer space, and Fairchild Industries called me and said, hey, you know, they needed a woman to be pushed up the corporate ranks, and I had great legs, so they took me. And now I would get taken into the office of Wernher von Braun. And I don't know much about him, but I do know he's German, and my father wouldn't even buy a German car at the time. And so I walked in, and I was speechless, obviously. I'm not the type that's usually at a loss for words, but I could not talk when I sat across his desk. And he said, you know, Carol, I couldn't teach 37 children, but I had a dream at 14 years old of going into space and finding out who we really are. And that was his whole theme when I met him. But I've met people along the way now who say, oh, Carol Rosin, she must be a Nazi lover. I have been told and seen myself written up as a Nazi lover, a Hitler lover, Wernher von Braun. I'm supposed to defend this man that I met that's one of the greatest visionaries of our time, that actually set off the space program. Of course, you'll see him in some of the peace groups. He set off the V2. Well, that's true. I have a picture of myself hugging a model of an A-10 bomber airplane. I mean, some of us, and I know some in here too, have worked in the military-industrial complex, and I have worked in that revolving door game. And so did von Braun, and he planned the escape to come to America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Well, we are brave. Free, I don't know so much about. But I know that I have been called a CIA agent, an FBI agent, a KGB agent, an agent of the military-industrial complex. I'm a pathological liar. I eat dogs. There are so many rumors that I'm the Mata Hari of space. Ha! And I've been written up this way. Somebody wrote an article one time that said, if Carol Rosin is all these things, she must be doing something right. And it's ridiculous. There's such a discrediting campaign going on, and it included about Wernher von Braun. And we have to stop this gossip. And if one of you goes out and gossips about me, this is my natural hair and I don't have it like this to attract attention, then don't talk to me, okay? I don't want any more negativity coming at me or anybody else in this room. We have to stop that gossip column, please, because we're discrediting ourselves, we're backstabbing everybody. It's not working. And I'm going to give you something that can bring us all higher into a higher frequency that Wernher von Braun would have loved, because his whole vision was to go into space peacefully. He worked in the weapons world, so did I. He worked under Hitler. Can you imagine? He said he tried to save some of the workers from having to work all those hours they were told. These guys were rocket scientists, and they were not there to kill people. They wanted peace in space. This was his whole theme. That's how I met this man. He took me into his office, and he was dying of cancer. And he wrote on a piece of paper, I wish I still had it, he was scribbling while he was talking to me. I was brought in for a 5-minute meeting that lasted for over about 2.5 hours. He kept shooing people away. And he thought it would be great if a woman took on this issue, because he said nobody would close the doors on me. So now he's scribbling on this piece of paper, and at the end of talking to me, he handed it to me, and he had tubes draining out of him, and he was given 3 to 6 weeks to live, and he said, I'm going to stay alive to teach you what the real game is, and you have to go out there. And I can't tell you how many times I have quit. Some of the people here know, because I wouldn't even sign the contract here until just a couple of weeks ago. I've so vacillated about even coming out again. Von Braun was writing the word humor on this piece of paper, in little circles, and he said, you have to keep your sense of humor. If you don't, this is going to kill you, because this is so serious, what's going on. The game in the military, industrial, lab, university, NASA, and other space industries around the world, intelligence community, governments, complex, it's all inexorably linked. You can't even blame any one of them for what's going on, because it's all part of it. It's called jobs and profits. And there is a way to create them bigger than during any hot or cold wartime. It's about space. And I know there are people here like me who say, why would we even be going into space, this technology? We shouldn't even have it. We have so many problems and suffering going on the planet. Yes, but the problem is we're already there. There are thousands of satellites up there working right this minute, space stations with 16 countries working on it, and more plans for space. A hotel. I mean, it's incredible, and a space elevator. And we could have, instead of battle stations, space hospitals. When astronauts go into space, there's no gravity, so they grow at 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Think of the bones and the body, the solutions to healing and health that we can learn from that kind of information. From building a space hospital. It sounds bizarre, but the choice is a space battle station. Which do you want? Because we don't have a choice now. Now the choice is battle stations. It says it right in these articles. I have a couple of copies if anybody wants it, and I'll post it too. We can build space hospitals, space schools, labs, farms, industries. We can build hotels, space elevators, lots of spacecraft. And the choice at this stage, when I started talking this way in 1977, when Wernher von Braun died, people looked at me like I had landed. And maybe